Hello artists and welcome back to art class. For the next project, we are going to be using a technique called hatching and another one called cross hatching to add value to a winter hat. Now we're not going to talk about the winter hat in this video yet. We're actually going to do some practice with creating value with hatching and cross hatching. So this week is just practice, and then the next video about the winter hat is where I will show you specifically how to draw the hat and where you're going to use these hatching and cross hatching techniques to create a textured hat that looks a little bit more realistic rather than just coloring it in smoothly. So you are going to need a piece of paper and something to, I'm not going to say something to color with, but something to practice your hatching and cross hatching. What I would recommend would be using a colored pencil, crayons. You could possibly use markers. Markers would be effective as well. But I would recommend something more along the lines of crayons or colored pencils. I am going to demonstrate this with crayon just because that is what I happen to have on hand. So let's talk about what you have to create, and then I will show you how to do hatching and cross hatching. For your hatching and cross hatching, you're going to be making a value scale. We've done value scales before, likely in 3rd grade we've done them, but we are going to create some boxes that we're going to fill in with some values. So I'm just going to do this real quick with a marker. You can use a ruler if you'd like to do this, but I'm not really going to be grading you based on what your boxes look like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create myself a value scale chart on my paper. I'm actually going to be creating 3 columns that I'm going to be filling in with the different values. So I am going to kind of create a box. Again, I am not worried about how straight it is. I'm kind of just eyeballing it here. I want 3 columns because there is a 3rd technique that I'm going to show you that we're not necessarily going to be using for this project, but it's good to have in your toolbox. So I have my 3 columns. I'm going to split this in half. I am going to split this in half again, and I'm going to split this in half again. So I have 3 columns here. I'm going to label this one hatching, cross hatching, and this last one is going to be for something called stippling, which we will touch on after I talk to you about hatching and cross hatching. Now, when we do this value scale, all right, the way that this is going to work is it's going to be dark at the top and light at the bottom. Now, this whole bottom row here is going to be your lightest row, which means it's going to stay white. White is your lightest value. So you don't even have to do anything in these 3 boxes here for these 3 different values. You are only going to be worrying about the top 3 boxes, going from light, getting a little dark, getting a little bit lighter, and nothing. Now, hatching and cross hatching. Hatching is when you are creating value with lines that are going in one direction. And the more lines you have, the darker the value. So for example, if this is going to be my absolute darkest value, you can choose whatever direction you want the lines to go, but whatever direction you choose, that is the way they stay. You cannot crisscross them and go different directions. I like to do my hatching on a diagonal. So I am simply going to fill in this box with a whole bunch of diagonal lines. Now I still have a lot of white space in between these lines, so I'm going to add more lines in between those lines, and it starts to fill up my space more. Now I'm going to leave this one the way it is because the thing about using crayons or colored pencils for this is you can always make it darker, but you're going to have a hard time making it lighter. Since my lightest is white, I'm going to leave that one blank. Since this one is my lightest, I'm going to fill it with literally that's it. That's as light as it's going to get. So now that I have a lot of lines here and literally barely any lines here, this one is going to be kind of sort of in the middle. So I'm going to fill it with a few more lines than I would have put here. And then if I want, I could really go in here, really add in some more lines to make it dark. You're not coloring it in. You're able to see those lines. And then maybe I might fill in a few more here. So you can see that my value scale goes from dark to medium to light to white. Now this is hatching, so it's using one line going in the same direction to create value. And the more lines you have, the darker your value is. Now if this is hatching, I'm sure that you can figure out what cross hatching is. It's the same thing, except this time your lines can crisscross. So if I'm going to be doing my darkest value, I'm also going to be able to crisscross this time. And I'm just going to keep crisscrossing, you know, basically making it super dark, but not coloring it in. You still want to be able to see those lines. This one, I would be doing the same thing, just with a bit less lines. You can see more of the white paper showing through. This one is probably the easiest. So it's dark, gets lighter, lightest, white. So these are the two techniques that you can see with this student example of this hat over here. We're going to be using a lot more cross hatching and then a little bit of hatching in here just to create texture and to create value in your hats. So you're going to do one column with hatching and one column with cross hatching. Now stippling. Not really using stippling in this project, but it's always good to learn. For stippling, you definitely want to utilize a marker. So I'm going to use a marker for this. Stippling is creating value with dots. This one is probably going to be the most time-consuming one, but basically, all right, and you're not taking it and making little circles, you're literally just dotting it, which is why it's easier to do with marker. You can do it with like colored pencil or crayon, but it's a little more time-consuming because you're actually going to need to sit there drawing little circles. So it's easier to just do it with a marker. And you can see that, you know, already this is pretty time consuming. There are even more dots that I could add to this, but you can see that I've kind of created value where the more dots, the darker, and then the less dots, the lighter and lighter it gets. So that is what I want you to complete for this week. So you're going to make your own value scale. All right, remember, you don't have to use a ruler. I'm not really looking at how you make your value scale. Just make yourself some boxes, 3 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes each. Your bottom box is your lightest layer, which is white, and it gradually gets darker, darker, and darker. Do 1 column with hatching, 1 column with cross hatching, and 1 column I want you to give stippling a try. And we will move on the following week to learn how to use these techniques and maybe a little bit of stippling if you want to create a winter hat. But for this week, just practice, and I want you to show me your hatching and cross hatching techniques. And make sure you take a photo, send it to me so I can give you a grade, and I will see you guys again next time for art class. Bye!